Atlas, breathe. Owen Hale dropped to his knees in the gravel as the German shepherd staggered beside the half-repaired fence and collapsed against his boots. The dog's chest heaved without drawing enough air. A thin streak of blood marked the dust beneath his muzzle. Owen's hands went cold. "Stay with me, boy." At 41, the former wildfire firefighter had carried injured men through smoke and falling timber. But none of that steadiness came easily when Atlas looked up at him with frightened brown eyes. Owen lifted the 8-year-old shepherd into the back of his work truck, laid him on a folded canvas tarp, and drove toward the nearest emergency veterinary clinic outside Boise. The summer heat shimmered above the Idaho road. Every few seconds, Owen glanced into the mirror and watched Atlas struggle to swallow. 6 years earlier, during a wildfire near Loman, Owen had been knocked unconscious after a burning limb struck his helmet. His crew had been forced back by shifting flames. Atlas, then a young search dog working with a county team, had found Owen beneath heavy brush and pulled at his jacket until rescuers saw them through the smoke. Owen had lived because the dog refused to leave. After Atlas retired, Owen adopted him. Now the same dog lay behind him, fighting for every breath. The clinic staff met them at the entrance with a rolling stretcher. A veterinarian named Dr. Claire Benton examined Atlas, while a technician placed an oxygen mask over his muzzle. Owen stood against the wall, fists clenched, listening to terms that blurred together. Obstruction, internal injury, possible perforation. Dr. Benton studied the first X-ray, then turned the screen toward him. A narrow metal object appeared near Atlas's upper digestive tract. "It may have punctured tissue," she said. "His breathing is worsening, and swelling could make removal much harder. Then take it out. We need an endoscopic surgical unit. Ours was sent for repair this morning." Owen stared at her. "Where is the nearest one?" "The regional animal hospital across Boise has one available, but they need him transferred immediately." She paused before adding, "Based on his current oxygen levels, we may have roughly an hour before the risk increases sharply." Owen checked the clock above the treatment room door. 2:17. 1 hour. He had spent years believing he owed Atlas a life, but debt had always been an idea. Something carried quietly, safely, without demanding action. Now it had become 60 minutes. A technician brought Atlas's worn leather collar and set it on the counter. "We removed this for imaging." Atlas lifted his head weakly at the sound of the buckle. Instead of looking at Owen, he fixed his eyes on the collar and pushed one paw toward it. "Easy," Owen said. Atlas tried again, his claws scraping the table. Something silver was caught beneath the leather strap. Owen picked up the collar and found a short, freshly broken strand of fencing wire twisted around the tag ring. One end had been cut cleanly. The other was bent and darkened with saliva. Dr. Benton examined it. This could match what he swallowed. Owen frowned. He had spent the morning replacing wire along the Harper family's livestock enclosure, but Atlas had been resting near the truck when Owen left to collect supplies. At least that was what Owen had believed. From the hallway came the cry of a frightened child waiting with another family. Atlas reacted instantly. His ears lifted, and despite the oxygen mask, he turned toward the sound and struck the collar once with his paw. Owen looked from the wire to the dog. Atlas was not pointing to a random object. He was trying to tell him where the injury had begun. Dr. Benton checked the clock. "The transport team is delayed by traffic. We need to move now." Owen closed his hand around the broken wire as Atlas's breathing tightened again. 54 minutes remained, and saving the dog who had once saved him might depend on understanding what Atlas had done before he collapsed. Dr. Benton sealed the broken wire in a specimen bag while 2 technicians secured Atlas onto a padded transport stretcher. "The regional hospital is holding the endoscopic suite," she said, "but the veterinary ambulance is still stuck behind a collision on Interstate 84. Owen checked the clock. 2:23. "I'll drive him. Your truck has no oxygen system." "Then let me take yours." Dr. Benton shook her head. "Clinic vehicles cannot leave without authorized staff, and I cannot abandon the patients here." Atlas drew another shallow breath beneath the mask. His paw shifted toward the counter where the collar had been placed. Owen brought it closer. The shepherd touched the leather with his nose, then turned his head toward the clinic doors. "He wants to go," Owen said. "He may be responding to the familiar scent," Dr. Benton replied. "Do not assume he understands the transfer." Owen knew that. Atlas was trained, not human. But the dog had focused on the collar twice, and the wire trapped beneath it looked freshly torn. Whatever had happened at the Harper property mattered. "Can the hospital use the wire to identify the object?" he asked. "Possibly, but an image and measurements may be enough. Take the sample with you." A technician hurried in carrying a portable oxygen cylinder. "We can spare this for the transfer, but it has about 40 minutes at the current flow." Dr. Benton looked at Owen. "Drive steadily, no sudden braking. Keep him on his right side, and do not remove the mask." She assigned the technician, Ben, to accompany them. They loaded Atlas into Owen's truck because its rear compartment had the flattest secured space. Ben anchored the cylinder and monitored the dog's oxygen level while Owen pulled onto the highway. Traffic slowed before the first Boise exit. Brake lights stretched across 3 lanes. Ben checked the monitor. "His level is dropping again." Owen gripped the wheel. 46 minutes remained. "Can we take the county road? It adds 12 miles. Owen studied the navigation screen. The highway collision had closed 2 lanes, and the estimated arrival time kept climbing. Atlas lifted his head weakly. His collar rested in a clear bag beside Ben. The dog stared at it, then nudged the bag with his nose. The silver wire clicked against the plastic. "He keeps going back to that," Ben said. Owen glanced into the mirror. "He was at a ranch this morning. I need to know what happened there. Not before surgery. I'm not turning around. Call the family." Ben used Owen's phone and reached the Harpers after 2 attempts. A woman answered, breathless and frightened. Owen asked whether Atlas had entered the livestock enclosure. "We thought he damaged the fence," she said. "A section was torn open when we found him." A child began crying in the background. Atlas's ears lifted despite his weakness. He pushed his nose against the specimen bag, then looked toward the phone. Owen felt the first sharp certainty that the fence damage and the dog's injury belonged to the same moment. "Was anyone hurt?" he asked. The woman hesitated. "My son was inside the pen when the gate started falling." Before she could explain, Ben pointed ahead. The traffic had stopped completely. Atlas coughed beneath the mask, and a red warning flashed on the monitor. Owen looked at the highway shoulder, the service road beyond it, and the clock. 39 minutes remained. Owen eased onto the shoulder and stopped before the concrete barrier narrowed the lane. "Ben, keep the oxygen steady." He grabbed the paper road map from behind the seat and unfolded it across the steering wheel. Years of wildfire response had taught him not to trust one route when conditions changed. A frontage road ran parallel to the highway, but the nearest ramp was blocked by the collision. 50 yards ahead, a maintenance gate opened toward an irrigation service lane. Owen stepped out, showed his former fire credentials to the state trooper directing traffic, and explained the medical transfer. The trooper radioed ahead, then unlocked the gate. "Stay under 30. Farm equipment may be on the road." Owen returned to the truck and guided it carefully onto the gravel lane. Atlas coughed again. Ben adjusted the mask without lifting the dog's head. 36 minutes. Owen called the Harper family on speaker while keeping both hands on the wheel. "Tell me exactly where the fence broke." The mother described the West livestock pen, where Owen had replaced several loose posts that morning. He pictured the layout: steel gate, wire mesh, narrow alley, feed shed. Was the gate already damaged? One hinge had pulled loose. "My husband planned to fix it tonight." The child's crying sounded. Closer to the phone. Atlas stirred and turned toward it. His paw scraped weakly against the specimen bag. "Let me speak to your son," Owen said. A small voice came through. Atlas pushed me down. "Before or after the gate moved?" The boy sniffed. "Before." He barked, then bit the fence. Owen glanced at the broken strand inside the bag. Did he pull backward? Yes. The gate fell where I was standing. The mother took the phone again. We thought he panicked. He tore the wire and dragged the mesh aside. Owen did not answer immediately. He pictured Atlas planting his feet, teeth locked around steel, creating enough space to move the child. The clue was stronger now, but incomplete. Photograph the broken section, he said. Include the cut end, the bent end, and the gate hinge. Send everything to Dr. Benton and the regional hospital. Ben looked at him. You think the piece inside him came from that fence? I think the shape matters. The service lane curved around a hay field. Ahead, a delivery truck blocked half the road, while its driver struggled with a loose load. Owen slowed, studied the ditch, and chose the firmer shoulder instead of forcing past. Atlas shifted suddenly and pressed his nose against the specimen bag again. Ben lifted it near the oxygen mask without opening it. The shepherd's eyes fixed on the bent end of the wire, then moved toward Owen. He recognizes it, Ben said. Owen watched the dog in the mirror. Or the smell on it. The mother's photographs arrived moments later. One showed the broken fence strand still twisted around the fallen gate. Owen enlarged it beside the sample bag. The bends matched. More importantly, the remaining wire carried a dark smear and a narrow tooth mark at the exact angle of Atlas's jaw. Owen forwarded the image to the hospital surgeon. A reply came almost immediately. Matching gauge and curvature could help determine the safest removal path. Atlas gave one faint bark when Owen tapped the bag. The dog had not only led them back to the source. He had given the surgical team its first reliable clue. The service lane narrowed beside an irrigation canal, and the delivery truck ahead stopped completely when its rear axle sank into the soft shoulder. Owen braked at a safe distance. On one side stood a wire fence. On the other, the canal dropped sharply below the road. There was no room to pass. Ben checked the oxygen gauge. 29 minutes of oxygen, maybe less if his breathing worsens. Atlas lay still except for the rapid rise of his ribs. Owen looked back toward the highway, where traffic remained frozen, then ahead at the trapped truck. He could force his pickup through the fence and cross the field, but the rough ground might jolt the metal deeper inside Atlas. Waiting for the veterinary ambulance could cost the hour Dr. Benton had given them. Call the hospital, Owen said. Tell them where we are and ask whether they can send a team toward us. Ben made the call while Owen climbed out and approached the delivery driver. The man had already placed warning triangles but was trying to move the truck alone. Owen studied the sunken wheel, the loose cargo straps, and the narrow strip of firm gravel beside it. Stop spinning the tires, he said. You're digging deeper. He retrieved a tow strap and 2 wooden fence braces from his truck, wedged the braces beneath the tire, and attached the strap to a reinforced frame point. Ben stayed with Atlas, relaying oxygen readings through the open window. 27 minutes. Owen pulled steadily in low gear. The delivery truck rose from the rut, shifted several feet, and cleared one narrow lane. The driver raised both hands in thanks, but Owen was already securing the strap. When he returned, Atlas had lifted his head toward the specimen bag resting near Ben's knee. The shepherd stretched his muzzle toward it, then tapped the plastic with his nose. He keeps choosing that wire, Ben said. Owen placed the bag where Atlas could see it without moving. Maybe he's trying to keep us focused. The hospital surgeon came through the phone speaker. She had reviewed the photographs and believed the object's hooked end might be lodged near soft tissue beside the airway. Do not let him twist or stand, she warned. The matching fence sample could help us choose the extraction angle. But we need him here. A county paramedic unit was now approaching from the opposite side of the service road with additional oxygen and traffic clearance. Owen could see its lights beyond the fields. Ben looked at him. We transfer him to their stretcher or keep moving? Owen considered the delay of unloading against the risk of their cylinder running dry. We take the oxygen, not move the dog. Every transfer increases motion. When the unit arrived, the paramedics secured a larger cylinder inside the truck and radioed deputies to open the remaining farm junctions. Ben monitored Atlas while Owen followed the escorted route at a controlled speed. The The shepherd's paw slid toward the bag again. Owen rested 2 fingers against the plastic, not Atlas's body. "I have it, boy." Atlas stopped reaching and lowered his head. Ahead, the hospital sign appeared beyond the next intersection, but the clock on the dashboard read 2:54. They had 23 minutes left, and the surgeon still did not know the full reason Atlas had bitten through the fence. The regional hospital team met Owen's truck beneath the emergency entrance with a rolling oxygen unit and a padded transfer board. 21 minutes since the latest stability estimate, Ben told the surgeon as they moved Atlas without changing his position. Owen followed with the specimen bag and the photographs open on his phone. Inside the imaging room, the surgeon compared the broken fence strand with the object visible near Atlas's airway. "The gauge matches," she said, "but the bend on the X-ray points the opposite direction from what I expected." Owen held the bag closer to the light. One end was cleanly cut where the old fence had failed. The other curved inward like a narrow hook. "He bit here," Owen said, pointing to the tooth marks. Then he pulled backward. The surgeon rotated the image. That would mean the hooked end entered last. The safest extraction angle changed completely. Pulling it straight toward the mouth could tear the tissue the hook had caught. A technician prepared Atlas for a second scan while the surgeon asked for the original fence photographs at full resolution. Atlas stirred beneath the oxygen mask and turned his eyes toward the specimen bag in Owen's hand. He lifted one paw weakly. Owen placed the sealed bag against the edge of the table, where the shepherd could smell it through the plastic without moving his head. Atlas touched it once, then looked toward the hospital door as a child's voice sounded in the hallway. Owen felt the meaning of the morning rearrange itself. Atlas had not wandered into discarded wire or chewed fencing from boredom. He had chosen the wire during an urgent moment, held it despite pain, and swallowed the fragment while forcing the gate away from someone smaller. The act that had injured him had been deliberate. "He was saving that boy," Owen said. Ben looked at the photographs again. One image showed the fallen gate angled across the exact place where the child had been standing. The torn opening beside it was only wide enough because Atlas had bent the mesh backward. The surgeon did not pause her work. "That explains the force and direction, but I still need confirmation of the remaining strand. If its curvature mirrors this piece, we know where the hook is facing." Owen called the Harper family. The mother answered immediately. "Do not move the gate," he told her. "Photograph the broken end from above and both sides. Put a ruler beside it if you have one." The child spoke in the background. "Is Atlas going to be okay?" Owen looked at the clock. 15 minutes remained before the original hour expired, though the oxygen had bought them some stability. "They're getting ready to help him." The new photographs arrived moments later. The remaining wire curved outward in the exact reverse of the swallowed fragment. The surgeon placed both images beside the scan and traced the likely path with one gloved finger. "Now we know how it entered and how it must come out." She ordered a controlled endoscopic approach with surgical backup rather than an immediate open procedure. The decision reduced trauma but required precise positioning. Atlas's paw moved again toward the bag. Owen closed his hand around it. "I understand." The shepherd relaxed against the padding. For the first time, Owen stopped seeing the wire only as the thing killing Atlas. It was evidence of why the dog had risked himself. The hour had begun as a desperate race to repay an old debt. Now Owen understood the truth. Atlas had saved another life that morning, and the clue he kept pointing toward had just given the surgeons their best chance to save his. The Harper family reached the hospital by phone, while the surgical team prepared Atlas for anesthesia. The boy's mother spoke quickly, guilt tightening every word. "The west gate had been leaning for days. We tied it with temporary wire because the new hinge had not arrived." Owen watched technicians position Atlas beneath the imaging unit. "Tell the surgeon exactly what happened." The boy took the phone. "I went inside to get my red ball. The goat pushed the gate, and it started falling toward me. Atlas barked and knocked me down." "Then what?" Owen asked. "He grabbed the fence and pulled. I crawled through the hole." The mother continued. "When the gate hit the ground, Atlas yelped. We thought the wire cut his mouth, but he ran toward Owen's truck before we could examine him. Owen closed his eyes briefly. Atlas had not damaged the enclosure. He had recognized the failing hinge, moved the child from its path, and created an escape opening by wrenching the mesh backward. The swallowed fragment was the cost of holding that opening long enough. The surgeon studied the final photographs beside the scan. The child's account confirms the direction of force. The hook is facing away from the mouth, exactly as we mapped. A nurse announced that Atlas's oxygen level had fallen again. The remaining minutes on the original hour no longer mattered as a clean deadline. What mattered was that swelling and respiratory strain were worsening now. The surgeon ordered immediate induction. Owen stepped toward the treatment doors, but Ben stopped him gently. "They need room." "What about the deposit?" Owen asked. He had seen the estimate on the intake screen, more than he could pay that afternoon. The hospital administrator answered without judgment. "Emergency stabilization is already underway. We need authorization for the full procedure and a payment arrangement afterward." No one was refusing care, but the responsibility was real. Owen signed the consent form and accepted the financing paperwork without reading past the total. Atlas had once crossed smoke to reach him. Owen would not let pride become another locked gate. As the technicians began moving the table, Atlas opened his eyes and searched for Owen. Owen raised 2 fingers, the old hand's signal Atlas knew from search training. "Stay steady, wait for me." The shepherd's ears shifted, and his paw stopped scraping against the padding. "Good boy," Owen whispered. Dr. Benton's message arrived on Owen's phone with Atlas's complete medical history, previous anesthesia notes, and records from his working years. Owen forwarded everything to the surgeon, along with the wire measurements and the Harper photographs. The operating room doors opened. The surgeon took the specimen bag from his hand. "This evidence may keep us from making the wrong first move." Owen released it. The clock read 3:11. Only 6 minutes remained in the hour Dr. Benton had estimated, and Atlas was finally being taken in. Behind the closing doors, the dog gave one faint bark in response to Owen's raised hand. The operating room doors closed, and the faint bark disappeared behind them. Owen remained standing with 2 fingers still raised until Ben gently touched his shoulder. Only then did his hand fall. The hallway seemed suddenly too quiet. For the first time since Atlas had collapsed, there was nothing left for Owen to do. No road to choose. No wire to measure. No phone call to make. No obstacle he could solve with his hands. He sat beneath the clock and stared at the scuffs on his boots. 3:17 came and went. The hour was over, but the fear was not. Through the narrow window in the surgical doors, he could see only fragments of movement. Blue gowns, stainless steel, a monitor flashing beyond someone's shoulder. Then an alarm sounded briefly. Owen stood. A nurse crossed the room quickly, blocking his view. The sound stopped, but nobody came out. His chest tightened. 6 years earlier, he had awakened beneath burning timber with Atlas pulling desperately at his jacket. He remembered smoke filling his mouth, the heat against his face, and the humiliating helplessness of realizing he could not stand. Atlas had stayed when instinct should have told him to run. Owen had spent years turning that memory into a promise. If the dog ever needed him, he would be enough. Now Atlas was behind a locked door because Owen had not been enough. He had needed Dr. Benton, Ben, a trooper, paramedics, the Harper family, and surgeons he had never met. Even the money for the procedure existed only because a hospital had allowed him to sign for debt he did not know how he would repay. The thought should have made him grateful. Instead, exhaustion twisted it into shame. Ben sat beside him. "You got him here." Owen shook his head. "Late. Alive. For now." Another muted tone sounded behind the doors. Owen looked down at Atlas's leather collar resting beside him. Without the dog wearing it, the thing seemed strangely small. He ran his thumb across the worn edge where years of fur had polished the leather smooth. A few brown hairs remained caught near the buckle. Owen closed his fist around it. "He saved me once," he said quietly. "Then he saved that kid. And when it was his turn, all I could do was drive." Ben did not answer immediately. Sometimes driving is the part that keeps someone alive. Owen heard the words, but they could not reach him yet. Behind the doors, Atlas lay unconscious because he had refused to let a child stand beneath a falling gate. Even injured, he had kept pointing them toward the clue they needed. Owen pictured his paw scraping weakly toward the specimen bag, still working while his own breathing failed. His eyes burned. He lowered his head and pressed Atlas's empty collar between both palms. For the first time that day, Owen allowed himself to imagine leaving the hospital without him. The possibility hollowed the air from his lungs. Beyond the doors, a monitor changed rhythm again. Owen looked up, but no one emerged. There was nothing left to fix, nothing left to carry, only the waiting, and the terrible knowledge that love could bring someone all the way to the door and still have to let go. The surgery lasted 38 minutes, though Owen experienced each one separately. When the doors finally opened, the surgeon carried the sealed wire fragment in a metal tray. It was longer than the X-ray had suggested, with the hooked end turned sharply backward. The photographs and matching sample were accurate, she said. We rotated it away from the injured tissue before removing it. Without that angle, a direct pull could have caused a major tear. Owen looked past her. Atlas. Stable but not safe yet. The wire punctured the upper digestive tract and irritated tissue beside the airway. We repaired the damage and placed a temporary drain. The next several hours will matter. Relief reached him carefully, as if afraid to arrive too soon. The surgeon set the removed fragment beside the specimen bag. Together, the two pieces nearly completed the broken section shown in the Harper photographs. The tooth marks aligned with the bend, and the dark residue matched what remained on the fallen gate. The evidence no longer left room for doubt. Atlas had bitten through the wire, pulled the damaged mesh away from the child, and swallowed the hooked fragment during the effort. What had first looked like careless destruction was a deliberate rescue. The Harper family arrived while Atlas was being moved to recovery. The boy carried the red ball he had gone into the pen to retrieve. His mother stopped several feet from Owen. We should have repaired that gate sooner, she said. Atlas paid for our delay. Owen heard no excuse in her voice, only responsibility. Make sure nothing like it stays temporary again. She nodded. We already called a fencing company, and we're closing the enclosure until it's rebuilt. The boy looked toward the recovery doors. Can I tell him thank you? When the surgeon says he's ready. Dr. Benton joined by video call to review the operation notes. Owen supplied Atlas's previous anesthesia history, medication record, and the exact time his breathing had changed. Those details helped the recovery team adjust pain control and watch for complications. He had not performed the surgery, but every action he had taken, the route, the wire sample, the photographs, the medical records, and the familiar hand signal, had carried Atlas to the people who could. The surgeon allowed Owen into the recovery room for 1 minute. Atlas lay beneath warm blankets with monitors attached and his breathing steadier than before. Owen approached slowly and placed the leather collar where the dog could smell it. Atlas opened his eyes. His paw shifted once toward the collar, then toward Owen's hand. Owen raised 2 fingers. Stay steady. The shepherd's ears moved, and his tail struck the blanket once. Outside the room, the surgeon completed her report. The cause of the injury was now officially documented as an accidental ingestion sustained, while preventing a child from being struck by a collapsing gate. The Harper's account, the photographs, and the matching wire confirmed it. Owen had spent 6 years believing Atlas's first rescue created a debt he could never repay. Now the truth was clearer. Atlas had never counted lives that way. He simply moved toward danger when someone needed him. Owen had finally done the same, not by becoming the surgeon, but by refusing to let panic, traffic, money, or old grief stop the next necessary step. Atlas was alive, the child was safe, and the wire that nearly killed the dog had become the evidence that revealed exactly who he had always been. Atlas remained in intensive care through the night. Owen slept in a chair near the recovery ward, waking whenever footsteps crossed the hallway or a monitor changed rhythm. By sunrise, the surgeon reported that the swelling around Atlas's airway had begun to decrease. His temperature was stable, and the temporary drain was working. He still faced several days of observation, but the immediate danger had passed. Owen stood beside the kennel as a technician removed the oxygen support. Atlas breathed slowly on his own, then opened his eyes and searched the room. When he found Owen, his tail moved once against the blanket. "You made it," Owen whispered. The hour that had ruled every decision the day before was over. Owen had not defeated it alone. Dr. Benton had recognized the emergency. Ben had protected Atlas during transport. The trooper and paramedics had opened a safe route. The Harper family had provided the missing facts, and the surgical team had used the wire evidence correctly. Owen finally understood that accepting help had not weakened his promise to Atlas. It had fulfilled it. The Harpers visited after the surgeon approved a short meeting. Their son placed the red ball outside Atlas's recovery kennel and stood with both hands behind his back. "Thank you for pushing me," he said. Atlas lifted his head, sniffed toward the boy, and rested again. The child's mother handed Owen photographs of the rebuilt enclosure. The damaged gate had been removed, the posts replaced, and every temporary wire tie eliminated. "We should have fixed it before someone got hurt," she said. "We won't make that mistake again." Owen accepted the apology without turning it into punishment. The lesson mattered more than blame. 5 days later, Atlas walked out of the hospital wearing a soft harness instead of his collar. His steps were careful, but he kept his place beside Owen's left leg. The final bill remained substantial, and Owen arranged monthly payments through the hospital. No stranger erased the cost, and no sudden reward solved his life. He returned to work, took additional fence repair jobs, and adjusted his expenses. Each payment reminded him that love was not measured by what felt convenient. It was measured by what a person continued to carry. Atlas recovered over the next 2 months. At first, Owen limited him to short walks beneath the cottonwoods near their small house. Gradually, the shepherd regained strength and began bringing his leash to the workshop door each morning. Owen also returned to the Harper property, not to collect praise, but to inspect the repaired pen. He found 2 more farms nearby using temporary wire on weakened gates. With the owner's permission, he repaired both at material cost and began setting aside 1 day each month to help families who could not afford urgent enclosure work. He called it the Safe Gate Day, though he never printed signs or asked anyone to celebrate it. Atlas accompanied him when his health allowed, resting in the shade and watching every hinge Owen tightened. One evening, Owen finished replacing a broken latch at a small pasture outside Boise. Child stood safely behind the new fence while Atlas lay near the truck, his scar hidden beneath thick fur. Owen struck the metal post twice with his wrench, paused, then tapped once. Atlas raised his head and answered with a single bark. 6 years earlier, the dog had crossed wildfire smoke to find Owen. Months earlier, he had torn through wire to save another child. When Atlas's own life depended on someone else moving toward danger, Owen had finally done more than carry gratitude. He had acted, trusted, and stayed. The sun lowered across the dry Idaho fields, turning the repaired fence gold. Owen opened the passenger door, and Atlas climbed in slowly before settling beside him. As they drove home beneath the wide evening sky, Owen no longer felt he owed the dog a life. They were simply living the one they had saved for each other.